Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about interviews, residency interviews. I have covered this topic in great detail across multiple videos before, so I would highly recommend watching those because those videos have examples, practice questions, and my responses, and I think a lot of people found that very useful. The idea of today's video is more of a summary of the three stages of interviews, right? The pre-interview, interview, and post-interview. And I'll be sharing a few key tips as we go along and basically highlighting some good practices, maybe some not so good practices, and hopefully you guys will find it beneficial as a quick review, a quick recap of things you want to keep in mind as you get into the interview season for this match. All right, let's start with the pre-interview stage. You've applied to programs, interviews are now coming in. Sometimes people say IMGs get interviews a bit later than AMGs, okay. And it's difficult to predict when you're gonna get interviews. So do not track, do not compare you getting interviews versus someone else getting interviews and how quickly or how late they're getting interviews. Do not compare. Focus on your application, you've applied. You can't really change the pace or rate or the number of interviews you're getting. So just focus, you've done your part, you've submitted your application. Just make sure that any interview invite that comes in, you act quickly. And why is that? Because quite often, many programs have limited interview spots, and if you don't act quickly to that invitation, first, the preferable spots will get taken up. Secondly, you might get placed on the wait list because they're just essentially all interview slots have been occupied, right? So make sure you respond to an interview invite as soon as possible. You'll get them on ERAS, you'll get an email notification. What I did for my application season is I changed my email app notification sound to a ringtone instead of a message sound. You get me? So instead of like a buzz or like a beep, it was a ringtone that started playing and it wouldn't stop until I actually turned it off. That way, I didn't miss a boop or a beep. So that was something that I used to make sure I stay on top of those interview invites that come in. Cool. Now you have the interview invite, you've booked your date, you're looking forward to it, excited. First thing you want to do is obviously prepare, practice for the interviews. I spoke about it in the last video. I have multiple videos on interview practice, so watch those if you want to practice. Second thing is read up about the program and read about the faculty, read about the program leadership, about the residents, the trainees, where did they come from, what are their hobbies like, and are there any unique things about the institutions or hospitals' philosophy or history that really intrigue you or impress you. So read about those things. Read about the state, the city. What are the cool things to do in the state and city, because you would want to relate to those things when you're in the interview expressing interest in that program, in that state, in that city. Another thing I'd want to mention about the pre-interview phase is you may get some back and forth communication from the program coordinators, let's say some forms to fill or something else, or taking part in like a pre-interview social event, like a virtual social event if it's happening virtually, or in person if it's happening in person. And that is an opportunity for you to kind of express your good interpersonal, or demonstrate your good interpersonal communication skills, right? You can reply back, and whenever you have to reply back, be nice, be polite, show enthusiasm, show that you're looking forward to your interview season, and so on. So these things will be taken into consideration, particularly if there's an applicant who did not respond to things on time, did not meet the deadlines needed for the paperwork, or an applicant who maybe wasn't very friendly over emails. So all these things will be taken into consideration. The input of the program directors or program coordinators is definitely taken into consideration as well. So keep in mind, you use that to your advantage, where you demonstrate that you're enthusiastic, you're really interested in the program, and you're just a good person to work with. All right, one more thing is your interview setup. Please invest in your interview setup. And what I mean by that is a good webcam. If you don't have a solid, inbuilt laptop camera, if you think your room or where you live, the lighting is not in your favor, you may invest in in an additional accessory light, right? To again just light up the scene and make sure that everything is clear and you're not in the dark when you're in the interviews. So these things are important because they truly reflect, they are part of that impression they build about you. So a good camera doesn't have to be expensive. You know, look at a few 1080p cameras on Amazon, a ring light or any other additional light. Clothing, you have to dress professionally, neatly, well groomed, right? If that means getting a haircut or shaving your beard and stuff like that, make sure to do that. You could add a few things to the background, like a painting, like something of interest. I had a painting in my background when I did my interviews, and it was a pretty good one. It was like roses, some abstract roses or something, and I got multiple comments about people liking my painting. So that was like a nice conversation starter, right? So if you have your favorite team's picture in the background or something like that, it's a nice way to get a conversation started. All right, interview day is here. You want to be pleasant. You want to be natural. You don't want to be robotic. You don't want to be overcompensating. You don't want to be arrogant, overconfident, right? And sometimes, believe me, that becomes very obvious. You see some people, some of the applicants that I had on my journey, it was unfortunate that you know, that left a very negative impression on anyone else in the room, where someone, let's say, is trying to dominate the conversation, someone's trying to dominate by answering all the questions being asked and stuff like that. So like, just avoid that. Be natural. You don't have to overdo anything, nor should you be too quiet. You know, engage in the conversation. Virtually, sometimes it can be awkward where someone starts speaking up and then someone else also speaks up at the same time, and that's fine. That's like, you shouldn't hide your face in shame just because that happened, you know. So things like that happen, but just be natural, be pleasant to talk to, smiling definitely is a big plus, and be natural. And as I said, your positioning should be upright. You shouldn't be hunching down or laying on the side. So make sure, you know, you're upright and your view is clear, it's well lit, and engage in the conversation. You know, I have to reflect on my virtual interviews, and I have to say they went better than I would have expected. So, you know, I'm sure it'll be the same with most of you. Technical things can happen, technical glitches, bugs, and someone getting off the line or disconnecting and stuff like that. That's all part of the game with virtual interviews, so do not worry about that. Make sure you have a stable internet and a good internet connection. You know, you don't want stuttering, or you're you know, lagging behind, or the conversation is choppy. You can't hear the program director what they're saying, nor they can hear you. So you want to avoid all of that, okay? I think this is really some of the main things I was thinking about when it came to the interview day. One quick tip. So if there are questions, like scenario questions, where you feel you may use some time, 30 seconds or 1 minute, to think about your response, it is perfectly fine to do so. I did that in some of my interviews where I was posed a question. I didn't know the answer from top of my head, and I told them, hey, can I take like 30 seconds to think about my answer? And they were like, yeah, it's perfectly fine. And I did. You know, obviously you want to take into consideration how much time you have for your interview, but if you feel like you would rather take a few seconds to think about a response versus blurting something out that is very odd, do so. Take your time. All right, post-interview communication, a big topic of discussion. Should you do it? Should you initiate? Should you not? What should you do? So programs by ACGME law, from what I understand, are not allowed to initiate any post interview communication. So they cannot message anyone or email anyone expressing interest in them and telling them to, maybe suggesting that they will be ranking them higher, so they should do the same. That is not possible. But it is a practice among applicants to email or message programs which they feel are a very good fit for them, and they would really love to train at those programs, to express their interest in the program and express their gratitude for taking their time to interview you. And people mentioned that, you know, I will be ranking this program #1 or very highly because I would really want to come and train here for whatever reasons, family, they really like the program, fellowships and stuff like that. So, you know, I think Expressing gratitude and thanking your interviewers is totally fine. You can consider, if you truly are very interested in certain programs, express it. And you know, I did the same in my interviews in the programs I was interested in, right? You just tell them like, hey, I'm very interested in your program. So it's the same thing you would do after your interview, and if that's something you would want to consider doing. Otherwise, you know, many programs may email you guys and say, hey, thank you all, you know, for the interview day. It was a pleasure talking to all of you. Wish you the very best of luck in this match season. It's very generic, very basic email which you can reply to and then express your gratitude and express your interest. Another thing post-interview is you want to analyze your performance. Is there something that you could have done better, perhaps something that went wrong with the setting, with your dressing up? You definitely should not be dressing up like this in your interview, so keep that in mind. Or with your responses, were you not very prepared? Did you not know your research experiences enough? Something you need to brush up on. And you'll realize with every interview, you're going to keep getting better. My first one was kind of crappy. I wasn't very prepared. Technical things and like first time doing a virtual interview. But then I realized that as the interviews went on, I kept getting better. I kept developing more of a rhythm to my interviews and my responses. And that really reflected in my confidence, right? So you'll keep getting better the more interviews you do. You just need to have the process of feedback and improvement. What are the things I can improve with regards to my interview performance? So, you know, life in medicine especially is that process of continuous improvement, continuous growth, and feedback. So, you know, make sure that you do identify potential limitations or issues early on in the interview season so you can fix them, and you know, so that your subsequent interviews are as good as you want them to be. Well guys, those were a few tips and pointers on interviews. I have to say the interviews were probably my favorite part of the match season. It was very nice talking to programs, their leadership, their trainees, getting to know them. You know, obviously virtual interviews kind of limit how much of a feel you can get about the hospital, the place. But, you know, I think I was able to walk away from many of those interviews having a very good impression of, you know, what kind of program this is and whether or not I'll be a good fit at that program. So enjoy your interviews. You know, you don't want to overstress about them. Be confident, be natural, and have a conversation. You'll realize like no one's really like they're judging you, or maybe they're kind of judging you, but they're not judging you in that sense. So you can be yourself. You have to show, because when we're anxious, we are not ourselves, and most of us would agree with that, right? So be yourself, be cohesive, be conversational, interactive, pleasant, confident. You want to highlight why you're a good fit for this program and what kind of program you're looking for and what you bring to the program in terms of qualities and skills. So make sure, you know, you keep all that in mind. Tailor your interviews around your strengths. Use this opportunity to highlight your strengths and your skills. And, you know, once you do that, once you realize that, hey, pretty much all my responses should reflect something in a positive light about me, right? So that will help you tailor your responses, and hopefully you'll be able to make the most of your interviews, because the point is getting the interviews is really one step toward victory and matching, but you want to make sure you sow that seed of interest in those programs that you would be a very good candidate for their program. Alright guys, I hope you liked the video. As I mentioned earlier, I'd highly recommend you check out those other interview videos on my channel from before. Very useful examples and my responses for many of those commonly asked questions, so you can benefit from that. I'll be around. Like and subscribe, share the stuff with your friends and colleagues, and I'll see you guys very soon.